everyone, Ben Cooper Radio. How on earth are you doing? I'm excited for today's show. The man I'm going to interview today, you would have seen, I'm sure you would have maybe seen him on TV. You've probably seen an interview before. You have maybe seen a book on the shelves of a bookstore. This man has had an incredible journey. Military, alcohol, addiction, depression, thoughts of suicide. You might already be painting a picture. You might already have an idea. I don't know. So let's not beat around the bush, because the man, let's be honest, has spent long enough in the bush in his early days. Let's introduce the guest of the show. So today I am speaking to Ollie Ollerton. Ollie, hello.
How are you, Ben?
Mate, I'm excited.
So am I.
I'm like a schoolboy, not to chat to an idol, but I'd feel to chat to a peer that has some exciting insight to genuinely help people move through points in their life that they're trying to move through. So I'm really excited about today's show.
Yeah, likewise, mate. And it's not an honour to be on the show, of course. And I'm looking forward to it. I'd just like to say on that as well. I'm not a self-proclaimed expert in self-development. Everything I talk about is something that I've experienced through it's time served experience. So everything I talk about and we'll discuss today is something that I learned the hard way, and some of the methods and the processes I learned I was self-taught, and it got me from such a bad place to what I consider now to be such an awesome place. So it comes from time served experience, not through an assumption. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and that is extremely valuable to anyone that is listening. So we better give a little bit of background. So who is Ollie Ollerton? Give us the little 5-minute kind of rundown of what the kind of highlights of the last sort of 20 odd years have looked like, which has essentially shaped what you do today.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Ollie Ollerton. Yep. We know that. I started my sort of career 18 years old. Joined the Royal Marines. Pretty traumatic childhood. And 6 years into the Royal Marines, I then went for Special Forces selection. Finally passed that after a couple of hiccups. And then got myself into the Special Forces. 5 years I spent in the Special Forces, left there, and after a short period, I then ended up in Iraq as, for want of a better term, really, as a mercenary. After that, I spent 6 years in Iraq, and then off to Southeast Asia, where I was basically getting kids out of child prostitution and slavery. Sort of ring circles, and then landed back in the UK. Back in the UK, I then bumped into my old mate Foxy, who is on the show with me, and we talked about dreams about setting up a company that used our expertise of experience to benefit others. And during that time I was setting that up, we then got the opportunity to star in a show that, at that time, we thought was maybe a one-off, that it is now turned into the 4th series, just being on TV. So it's been highly popular, highly successful. We're just about to start filming our 5th series. Man, I've never gone over my life in such a heartbeat. That was quick. There's a lot more in between the cracks.
There is a lot more, but obviously I don't want to devalue all the different interviews that we've already done. I want this interview to evolve and be a little bit different. I think one of the key turning points that you didn't highlight in any of that is that you had a very illustrious career. It was very intense. It was full on. It was alpha. It was very extreme. And when that ended, you kind of felt quite lost. And that feeling of lost sent you into a bit of a downward spiral.
Yeah, there is that. I mean, that was for me in hindsight, and luckily I got through that, and I wouldn't be here today otherwise. But for me, that is what basically happened. As humans, we have to have a purpose. we have to have a purpose. We have to have some clear direction of where we want to be in life, and we have to have something to aim for that pulls us towards it. And for me, and that's just for generally everyone. But then you get a soldier who's put into, like a elite special forces, who is then given such a great, overwhelming purpose. For them to then come outside, and certainly for me, I was sat behind the wire thinking that I could rule the world as soon as I get on the outside, and it wasn't the case. As soon as I came out, I realised that I had no purpose, and there was a massive void, an extremely massive void, and before long, that started going to a sort of I'd say a flat spin of nowhere. It caused me a lot of trauma, which I masked for a long, long time with alcohol. But deep down, beyond the smiles, there was a lot of discomfort and mental trauma.
What was the time frame for you, kind of coming out of the military, going into this kind of spiral, and actually finding that moment where you're like, hang on a second, I've got to sort my shit out. I need to, what was the extent of the period of almost darkness?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the problem with me, and I never blame the military for my mental trauma, although I know it had an effect on, every life experience has an effect on your mental state. But I don't blame the military, I joined with issues as a kid. Those that have read the book and have listened to podcasts know that I was attacked as a kid at 10 years by a chimpanzee at the circus and nearly got killed. Well, nearly died. It nearly killed me. So, for me, I joined the military with a lot of trauma. So when I came out, I think all the way through my military career, I was dealing with a lot of trauma. But you are in such a great institution in the military, and you've got your brothers to your left, your right, above and below that. You're kind of very sheltered. So for me, when I came out, it was there was a number of those periods, Ben. It wasn't just sort of one period. It was those periods would recur and recur over, all the time. It was sort your shit out. Things were spiraling out of control, drinking too much, partying too much, and then just understanding that your life just isn't going anywhere. And it was a lot of those periods of time where I would stop, regain control for a short amount of time, I'd get it back on track, and then it would just start dipping again. So it was a roller coaster for years, and that went on for 10 years. And to be honest, I don't know. The thing is with me, regardless of the shit I've put myself in, regardless of the situation I've been in, I have, by natural default, and I don't know where that came from, I do believe for me, it came from when I was attacked by a chimp and I survived it as a kid. I believe I've always had this overwhelming positive mindset. So although I've put myself in a great deal of depression, or I have found myself in a great deal of depression, that little ember, that ember of positivity has always burned for me, and that kept bumping me out of the shit I was in. So, fortunately, that sort of got the positivity and started overwhelming the negativity in the end. But over those years, it was a bumpy ride of ups and downs and lows and massive sort of emotional turmoil from sort of highs and lows, and it was mayhem. It was mayhem. So, but there wasn't sort of one period. It was an ongoing thing for 10 years. And I said, I sort of mentioned this a lot, that I was busy jumping all over the world, and we do this as humans. We're looking for this external fix. We think that everything that's going to make us happy is in front of us, is outside of us. And that was me, I'm looking to go here. I thought my purpose was to go, obviously I come from elite special forces. I thought, to be honest, I thought that would be my purpose. It was everything that I ever wanted. But the reality, perception and reality are two massively different things. And for me, joining the military, that wasn't quite enough. Then joining the special forces, that wasn't quite enough. It still wasn't. It wasn't clicking. It wasn't a complete circle. And certainly when it came out again, I'm always trying to find it, and I was jumping all over the world. I was looking in the wrong places, and it was actually when I was jumping all over the world, doing all these different things, and it was when I went out to Thailand to save the kids and help the kids, it was then that it all clicked and it started making sense to me. And it was just, I found that sense of purpose, and that was helping other people. But, you know, up until that point, that was an epiphany for me. Up until that point, I was trying to find this purpose, trying to find this external fix that was going to make me happy. It wasn't there.
So there's going to be people listening to this podcast that are like, yeah, I get you, Ollie, that's awesome, purpose, da-da-da. But when they finish listening to this podcast and that kind of inspirational, motivational energy kind of subsides, and they're kind of left with life, work, sleep, home, all the rest of it, and they feel like they're in that place of a lack of purpose, how do people start to discover purpose within them where they're just not really sure? They're like, okay, I think my purpose is to go to work and earn money and get married and all that shit, but deep down there's nothing in my soul that's actually being catered for. I'm being left empty at the end of the day when I think I'm going through these purposeful motions. How do you help people sort of start to discover potentially their purpose or a greater purpose?
I think it's a great question, because you know, a lot of this stuff, you know, a lot of people talk about, oh, it's all about the mindset, it's all about this. What does that actually mean? What does it actually mean to the individual? You know, how do they actually find purpose, for instance? And I think for me, you know, I didn't go on a fact-finding mission to find purpose. I stumbled over it, which helped me. But I think anyone, and the trouble is as well, when you're quite young, it is hard to define your purpose, because you haven't really had the life experience to tell you what makes you happy and what makes you sad and what gives you a lot, you know, what makes you very passionate about something. So the longer it's a bit of a catch-22, because you need life experience to sort of, a lot of time, to define a purpose. And that was the case for me. But for me, one thing I've always done, and, you know, even it was someone that actually told me, and it sort of clicked. They said, you know, when you were in the military, you used to make me laugh. You would ask questions about everything, and I was a pain in the arse. But I think that's our right to know that, and I think that we are born as creative human beings, right? We weren't meant to be put into boxes and categorized and said, you will do this, you will do that, you will do blah blah blah. So, but the thing is, people fall into that social conformity, and they're quite happy to be, you know, follow other people's footprints when they should be making their own. So for me, it was about questioning everything. I had to question, what's the purpose in doing that? What's the purpose in doing that? And if I had to give anyone advice, you really have to start questioning everything in your life. Are you happy for this? If you're happy and everything's great, and that's an honest answer from within, not from the outside looking in, then that's fine, you know. And that happiness might be the fact that you've got kids and you've got a nice lifestyle and you've got a steady job. But you have to ask yourself as many times as possible, are you happy? Are you doing the things that you love? Are you passionate about that? And then if you're not, you then have to go back and start reviewing things all the way through your life. Where have you been happy? What have you done in your life where you've been very satisfied, very complete, and that's made you happy? And then you have to try and turn that, for me, if you want to turn that into some kind of job, you then have to turn your passion into some kind of revenue-making activity that allows you to do that day in, day out. And like, you know, I mentioned this before the interview, Ben, that, you know, the motivation for revenue should never be the revenue. It's a byproduct of the things you're passionate about. The money then comes afterwards, you know, the money and everything else. But you should be passionate about what you do. And we should all be doing something that we love, that makes us fulfilled and makes us happy. For me, and I think, to be honest, and I can say it's exactly the same for you, Ben, what makes us happy, what makes us all happy as humans, is when we help other people. When we put our hand down to help other people, not so fortunate, or maybe even as fortunate, but you not so much put your hand down, but push them forward. When you start helping other people, the fulfillment and the satisfaction from that is absolutely unbelievable. And that for me was when I went to Thailand and helped those kids, and seeing those kids and having that such a powerful impact on their lives. That for me was the epiphany. Now, it makes sense, doesn't it, when it comes to human evolution, that we should get some satisfaction about helping other people, because we're helping the human race to evolve. So for me, I think anything that you can do that can help other people, will give you a great deal of satisfaction. But the trouble is these days we're all looking for the greatest Instagram followers. We're all looking for, the most followers, the most likes. We work within these silos. Some people, work on their own, and we've lost this ability of this community to help each other. And when we do that, it is so fulfilling. I cannot express in words what it means to me to do that. So yeah, I think anything that you can do or think that helps others, then is a win-win. But really, you have to start questioning your life. What's made you happy in the past? Where do you think your passion is? But I think at the bottom line is sort of the default with everyone. If you're helping other people, you will feel a lot of fulfillment from that.
Love that. Couldn't agree more. It's probably where I found my passion for my work when I started helping people and really seeing the impact. Like, don't get me wrong, the early days I wasn't very good at my job. I had to become better at my job to really see that impact, and that kind of spurred me on. And, I've seen many people in the fitness and personal development industry that have only lasted a year, 2 years in the industry, and it's maybe because they didn't become almost good at their job, and they didn't give it enough time to mature as a coach and evolve those coaching skills. Because, you going out into the jungle with someone and showing them how to make a fire and stuff is only a small part of the battle of helping that person survive in the wilderness. You've then got to teach them coping skills, how to be aware of your surroundings, how to look after yourself in every capacity, not just physically but mentally. Like, the action of making the fire is such a small part of survival in that environment. And I just think that's so important. I always say to young people, if you're not really sure on passion or purpose, just keep trying stuff. Go do that job, go help that person, go on an away day and experience something. And then, like you, they'll go away one day or they'll do something and they're like, I felt really good today. Like, I felt I really contributed both to myself and to other people or an environment or a situation. I think sometimes it's just literally about going all in and just doing it, as the famous Nike slogan would say.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fantastic advice there, because if you haven't got the experience to rely on, then actually start doing things and start really putting your testing the water. Really start getting a whole load of different experiences. I think that's great advice, Ben. Thank you.
So I'd like to try and take this another notch down in terms of kind of the mindset and character component, because what we're talking about now is some of the physical actions and experiences of self and developing self. And on that journey, you have to develop multiple sides of your character to be your best self. And what I've seen in your career is that you've gone through loads of these transitions where you've had to understand yourself at a better level, which is one part of it. And then it's about kind of like managing that. And I find it fascinating that you're in the military, you learn how to be kind of quite extreme, quite resilient, quite hardcore, quite resourcefulness, a great leader, a great team player. And then you came out of the military and it's like, right, I've got all these amazing skills that I'm not using anymore. I've got to discover this other side of myself, which is actually probably more compassionate to myself and other people. To learn better emotive coping skills, both for myself and to have, functional relationships with other people. Talk to me about some of those transitions that you had and some of the struggles there, because I've done a lot of development on myself with this, and it's fascinating and it's developing, but it's also problematic because you've then got to almost deal every day with an individual that is highly aware of themselves and their environment, and it is kind of like this emotional character juggling act every day.
Yeah, I totally understand all of that, and I tell you, a lot of people, I think, again, we're getting naked. Sorry, Ben's taking his shirt off. A lot of people have this perception that, I came out as this really stable, settled, this really guy with great direction and everything else. But I ran around for a long time so confused about who I actually was. And it's only been in the past 5 years where I've really started to understand who I am as a person and who I am emotionally. And I think that's come from understanding how we work as humans. I read a brilliant book that really was a turning point for me. And for me, it was almost like the new Bible. Well, it was the Bible as far as I see it. And that was a book called A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And it was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, a lot of people will read it and think, well, it doesn't make any sense to me. But if you are sort of ready to absorb that kind of learning, then when you read that book, and for me, it was just like, wow, it answered so many questions for me. A lot of questions. And what it helped me to become is, and again, like I say, this is only recent, the last 5 years. There's been massive changes in my life. One thing it allowed me to do, it allowed me to understand our emotions. It allowed me to understand my emotions. It allowed me to become an emotional observer as opposed to being an emotional victim. And that's what happens. We've got all these emotions running around in our brains, and unless we actually become the emotional observer, we get lost in that and we become a victim of those emotions. You've got to understand why you have fear. You've got to understand why there's ego. I mean, ego is a massive one. I mean, once you can understand ego, everyone has ego. It's almost like a self-defense mechanism. But you need to be able to control that. And one thing the special forces do teach you anyway, or it's a natural byproduct of the selection process, which is extremely grueling, is it allows you to become an emotional chameleon. So, it allows you to be able to understand your emotions and be that sort of observer from afar. But until you do that, I think we can all. I think there's so much confusion out there, and also understanding that the big one for me is the greatest discovery. I feel our greatest discovery was to understand our own human dysfunction. Once we understand that and realize it's not a personal thing, and that it's a general thing that everyone is experiencing, we've got two things. This is important. This makes a great deal of sense for me. So I apologize if I'm going to lose you here, but stick with me. I feel I've got something here. Now we have a contradiction in life. We have the survival blueprint, right? As far as evolution is concerned, it doesn't give a shit if you're happy, sad, you have good or bad experiences. It just cares if you're alive. So it wants to keep doing everything you've done yesterday and the day before, because it knows, regardless of what that situation is, it's kept you alive until today. So us, as humans, we are caught in the repeat cycle of yesterday. Our minds want to keep steering back to that misconceived comfort zone and keep doing everything that we did yesterday, because great, it's kept us alive. Doesn't give a shit if you're happy or sad. It's a good or bad experience. Now also, we're naturally meant to evolve in life and be sort of positive and achieve great things. So that for me is the conflict, and that is our own human dysfunction. We're pulling apart, from opposite sides, and that is the confusion in the middle. And I think once you understand that, and for me, once I started to understand that, and I understood, and that then had a link to my emotional state, I could then become, I understand why I'm feeling like that. I understand, look, I'm going to do something new tomorrow. I've not been out, for me, just recently, because of the book and everything else, I know there's no excuses, and I always say that to a lot of people, and I've used it as a bit of an experiment. I've stopped working out. I've stopped working out, and I've been eating out in restaurants. I've been on the road a lot. I've been eating in restaurants. And I got to the point where I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to leave it, because I know I can get back. I can get my fitness back. I know the system. I know the process. I've been there time and time before. So I used it as a bit of an experiment. But along that journey, it made me understand how important health, as in what we eat, and also exercise, etc., how important. And people don't understand how food is actually linked to our emotional state. They don't understand that. It has a massive effect on our emotional state. So over that period of doing my book, I went into a bit of a downward spiral, because I wasn't concentrating on my health, and I wasn't concentrating on my fitness. And I was losing it. I was losing it a bit. And now I've sort of got out the back end of that, and I've started with my fitness again and everything else. I've started getting everything back together again. So that's extremely important. But the most important the point I was making there, even now when I did my first run the other week, it was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And straight away, because I'm not doing the repeat cycle of yesterday, my mind is going mental. It's going, don't do that. Go and check your phone. Go and check your emails. It's doing everything apart from you going outside and just putting your trainers on. Or inside, put your trainers on the inside. But, and but I understood that's what the mind does. I just understand. I know what's going on in here. So what I do in those situations and what everyone can do, you have to forget. Don't listen to yourself. Forget the emotion. You have to have a process that is linked to a goal, and you must follow that process if you're going to achieve that goal. Because if you rely on your emotion and your dreams and goals and aspirations are simply just an emotion, you will never get there. Because the mind is so devious because of that conflict. Our repeat cycle of yesterday, that sort of survival blueprint, that you'll be in a state of confusion if you don't put it into a process.
What you've said is amazing, because so many people that try and understand the mind would look at someone like you, me, whoever, it doesn't matter, and think, oh, their mind's different to mine. Like they've got this unique perspective, they're strong, they're confident, they're able. When they do meditation, their mind goes quiet, like a still summer's afternoon. It's like, no, my mind is the same as yours. It's just as fucked up as yours. There's that little monkey jumping around with the cymbals going, like, I'm trying to make you think like this. And I really want people to resonate with this, because you have the very same demons that everyone else does. It's just you understand them better. You're comfortable with them. You're happy to spend half an hour with them, but you are standing back, as you said, and you're observing them as an observer rather than being in them and feeling crushed by them and owned by them and controlled by them. And I think when people can stand back and understand that, they can start to appreciate that it's not something that we have to try and change. It's just something that we have to understand and be at one with and manage as best as we can every day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the best advice I think anyone can ever give to someone. And they've also got to understand, in this ever sort of convenient world that we're being brought into, you've got to understand that life is tough. Regardless of how convenient life is tough. People will die, people will walk all over you, people will let you down, people will cheat on you. Even your closest friends, even your family. And that is tough. And the trouble is, a lot of people are suffering with mental trauma because, I can press a button now and next there's a delivery at my door. If I'm hungry, I can just go down the street. And it's just so convenient. So when something happens, something major, like someone dies in your family, that causes major trauma, or someone lets you down, that causes major trauma. But as soon as we start to accept that life is tough, these things will happen. The longer you go through life, you will get disappointed, you'll get let down, cheated. You just got to accept that. It's just life. It's just the way it is. And the same as us, just accept your humanness, appreciate it. When those thoughts and everything come in, a lot. Thanks for sharing. I'm pushing my demons in the room all the time, into the corner. I'm like, look, I appreciate you, but you're not welcome right at this moment. I thought to myself, the lips don't move, but this is going on in my head all the time. And when I have those emotional demons that are coming in, trying to distract me from the direction I want to go that heads towards my goals, and I have loads of them, I'm talking to them all the time to get away from me at the moment. Go and sit over there. You're not welcome at the moment. It's just, and it's an ongoing battle. Everyone's, someone said a quote to me the other week, and I think it's brilliant. A lot of people think there's obstacles in the path. The obstacles are the path. Nothing is ever easy. But the thing is, the way we're brought into this world, we're like a shark. We want to fuck, we want to eat, and we want the shortest way to them. But unfortunately for us, we get alcohol, which gives us a turbo drive to all of that. So, but and that's the principle of our humanness. That's all we want to do. That is the blueprint again of the human evolution. We want to procreate, we want to eat and survive, and we want the shortest way to everything. So everything we do, we are naturally we have a default setting to take the shortcut to everything. That's why so many people don't achieve their goals. They don't achieve their dreams because they're always taking that shortcut. So another thing I talk about a lot, is the shortcut syndrome. Sorry, the shortcut syndrome. And it's when, I can understand when that shortcut is trying to come in. It's trying to get me to something as quickly as possible. Now, you can afford to take the odd shortcut. It works now and then. But you can't keep doing that all the way through your life. There's no one at the end of the week to hand you that time back. You know what I mean? It catches up with you further down the track. So, and I call this a lot about, it's about being battle ready for everything. You've got to have your life and everything, the physical and mental side of everything in your life, so squared away that so when something does come along, quite disruptive, you're in a mental and physical state to be able to handle that without it causing you too much trauma and fracturing your mental state. So yeah, I mean, I think just, again, understanding how we work as humans, accept our humanness and understand our human dysfunction is the best thing people can do.
So let's say someone understands it, they have experienced a lot of the layers, but they're struggling to almost rediscover a part of that. And if you will allow me to, I want to speak personally from my situation and kind of almost see what you think about it, give me some advice. And I think the listeners listening to this will hopefully see where I'm coming from, because I've shared some of these stories kind of before. But when I was younger, I was a very driven young male. I had a separated family when I was younger. My dad wasn't around from the age of like 11 to 12, so I didn't have a male influence in my life. And classically what happens is the guy will go out and try and seek success, try and become validated, try and experience that love that is not being given by that male leader in their life. And when I was younger, I was very driven. I became successful. Like, it wasn't overnight. It took a long time, like anyone else. And then kind of some ego maybe took over, a couple of bad decisions. And I found myself in 2017 fighting bankruptcy. So I've got a business, I've got loads of staff, there's lots happening, mortgage, all the stresses and financial constraints that everyone tends to have as an adult. I had all of them, and I had to try and fight bankruptcy. And at the same time, I was getting attacked online by a certain individual. And I kind of went from this kind of alpha-driven, quite aggressive, clear-minded individual. And it's not to say that I wasn't compassionate and I wasn't loving and I wasn't kind of humble, but they weren't characters that were strongly expressed in me. And then in that period of kind of regression where I had to go back and think, fuck, I'm fighting every day here to just stay alive, I felt I had to become more compassionate, understand things, become more in touch with myself. I went to a Tony Robbins event, Unleash the Power Within, and don't get me wrong, it helped me. But I've kind of been through this massive journey of learning and understanding greater compassion for myself and emotion. But actually getting back to 2016, where I felt alpha, strong, 100% clear-minded, is currently a struggle for me. And I did a podcast on this the other week where I said to everyone, I was like, I feel like I'm at 80%. I can see it all. I can feel a lot of it, but I can't quite just put it all into this box and like drive it forward. And I'd like to think there's a lot of people listening to this that have seen things in themselves that they really liked. Character traits where strong, driven, passionate, visionary, and actually maybe they've had a kid, or they've changed jobs, or they've had a few financial issues, and actually it's kind of knocked them down a little bit. They've been punched in the face, kicked in the balls, and now they're like, fucking hell, like, how do I get back to what I once was? And I wonder what your perspective might be on that, because for me it would be helpful, and hopefully for other people it would be insightful.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear your story. Thanks for sharing that, Ben. And I totally understand what you're saying, because this really resonates to me. When I left the military, and when I not so much when I left the military, but I was talking last week to someone, and I was actually, because I went to a podcast. You couldn't. He had like a list of questions, and he didn't get to ask one. So it was just like I was just on constant, And I thought afterwards, people think I'm this guy that's always felt at ease doing this, and I've not. 5 years ago, or no, more than that. Let me say about 8 years ago, I couldn't string a sentence together, and that wasn't because I never went to school or something like, I'm totally illiterate or whatever. It's because I was so broken. And I'd been knocked down so much. I was so weak. I had no confidence or ability to talk to people and feel like what I had to say was worth listening to. I felt so pathetic. And that for me was the point I decided I need to, that was the moment I thought I needed to change. And the way I did that, a lot of people sort of will live in that discomfort for all their lives and not do anything about it. They'll understand they've got a mental health issue, and they'll never do anything about it. But that's because they're always focusing on the problem. They're never looking at, there's two things here that I talk about a lot. There's mental health, and that is when you keep talking, I call it mental health, but not forget mental health, put that to one side. What are you doing about mental wealth? Okay, it's mental. How am I going to grow mentally as a person? And that for me was when I understood that I had to put process into play, because everything I thought was so negative, and I couldn't get back. And this is why I started to question myself, because like you, I've been knocked down so much, and I truly believe myself. People think, it's an alpha male, these issues are sexual. I believe I'm more empathetic and more emotional than many people think, and I'm less of the alpha male than people think. For me, the alpha male bit is a little bit more, I'd say, an act, more than my emotional, my have a great deal of empathy for other people. I think that is more me. But we all feel that we have to live up to this reputation of being this alpha male, and we put so much pressure on ourselves because we're thinking about it too much. We're thinking about that perception of who we're supposed to be from the outside looking in. When if we had just forget about everyone else and start investing in ourselves, start investing in mental wealth. Now, for me, I had so much going on inside, as we do. The older you get, and the more experiences you go through, you get so much information. The neurons start to die, but the information doesn't go away. So what you end up with is a whole load of thoughts running around your head day in, day out. And generally, people as humans have around about 70,000 thoughts per day. Now, I knew that I had to close down that mind chatter. If I was going to get anywhere in life, I had to close that down. So, and again, at that time, I thought, well, I'd read about meditation. I'd read about, being able to focus the mind on what you truly want. And now it really makes sense to me. When I look back, and it was clunky to start with, but you have to start. I used to sit down and I used to listen to guided meditations, and I still do, by Bob Proctor. I think he's an absolute genius. I used to. It was clunky at the start, but the thing is, when I look at it, and when I've said meditation to a lot of people, they freak out. They're like, "Hold on, you're in the special court. You can't be that guided meditation." It doesn't fit. But when you look at meditation, right, it's your focused attention at an intention. So when you have got the 70,000 thoughts banging around your head each and every day, unless you focus on some of the thoughts that you actually want, the drive and purpose that is natural within us will find something if you don't choose it. And sometimes, and a lot of the times, that is something that is not of your choosing and sends you into a downward spiral into depression. So that, for me, is how I got out of that, and how I got my alpha male back. And the natural alpha male is by being able to sit there, being able to clear all that chaff that was going on inside my head and really focus on the things that mattered. Our heads are so creative. We're born as amazing creative beings. Unfortunately, you go to school and they try and rid you of all that, and it works for the majority. But, we need to be able to focus our attention on the things that we want. And now everything I've done, and that is the way. I mean, I've got a mindset program on my an online program on Breakpoint, my company, and that is the actual process I went through from broken to battle ready. And when I look back on that now is helping so many people. And that was as basic as getting up in the morning, and I wrote a contract to myself that I would read every day of the things I wanted to achieve with the time frame I wanted to achieve it in. And I read it every day. And I finally got to the point, I used to read it in the morning, used to read it at night, And I used to then, after a certain amount of time, I found it so hard to like look at myself and tell myself in the mirror what I wanted. But the thing is, if you can't tell yourself what you want, how do you expect to ever achieve it?
Mm.
You know what I mean? If you're not at comfort looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, bang, this is what I want, you'll never achieve it. So that process for me was absolutely gold to get myself out of that, you know. And that was also every time, as soon as you get up in the morning, positive affirmations, exercise, so extremely important because it releases endorphins. And I just threw myself into process, and I had so much negativity in between the processes. But I just knew if I wanted that end goal of achieving more and being stronger and being back to the person that I feel I was when I was sort of in the special forces, that was the only way I was going to do it, through process.
Love that.
Yeah.
Write a contract with yourself. How many people do that? Because the reality is you owe it to yourself to have that level of accountability to yourself. And we sit down and write goals, and maybe we write down how those goals are going to happen. But a contract sounds like a real commitment, like a commitment to self. And I really like that. Yeah.
No, it's so powerful, and it causes such a, you know, when you actually, and the whole thing is, you know, we are born, again, you get systemized, and that creates the subconscious blueprint. The only way you can change that subconscious blueprint is by repetition. Now, a lot of people talk about 21 days to change a habit. That's a load of bullshit. It doesn't work. 21 days will get you into a new routine. Around about 60 days, we'll start changing the habit. So a lot of people, when they get to sort of 3 weeks in, they're like that. They're over the honeymoon period, and they're like that. This shit doesn't work. You know what I mean? And that's when they throw in the towel. And they're just at the point, at the pinnacle of just achieving so much. And 98% of people just don't go over. They just like throw the towel in because they can't see and feel that tangible reward at the end of that. The whole mental development, you know, personal development is so hard because there isn't that tangible something touchy-feely I can grab and say, there's your reward for doing that. You know, it's a slow process. But you've got to understand, regardless of how slow it is, as long as you keep momentum and you keep moving towards that goal that you've set for yourself. And it's so important that you must put a time on that goal, because as far as the universe is concerned, for us, a year to the universe is nothing. You know, so you could have a goal and the universe is like that. Well, yeah, we'll give it to him in a billion years. But, you know, it's like, that's why you've got to put, because a billion years to the universe is nothing. You've got to put a time frame on these goals. And then once you've done that, the goal pulls you towards it. It's not, you don't drive towards the goal. It pulls you towards it. And a lot of people sort of say, well, this is all hocus pocus and it doesn't make any sense. But when you look at it in sort of a more, if you try and look at it in layman's terms, what you basically do, once you empower your subconscious, you will subconsciously take and make decisions that lead you towards your goal when you're not thinking about it. You will meet people. You will take a left turn instead of a right. You will take opportunities that you wouldn't have taken because that goal is in your subconscious. And people have got to understand that as long as you follow process and carry on momentum, you will improve. We are water. We're 65% water. Okay, water, when it's sat still, becomes stagnant. We're just the same.
Mm-hmm. So if I was to come back to a previous point you made about kind of going through the processes and reflecting on processes and stuff, one of the ways that I've tried to fix what I feel is an issue for me is I looked back and said, when am I happiest? And when I'm happiest is when I'm writing books, because I feel like I'm really adding value. I'm almost creating a legacy. I'm happiest when I'm out on the road talking, delivering speeches, got 30, 200, 500 people in front of me listening to what I'm saying. And during that kind of darker period for me, I wasn't doing that as much. I was at home, I was looking at spreadsheets, I was really deep in the finances because that's what, you know, was a big issue at the time and stuff. And I'm not there yet. I would describe myself as at 90% to where I want to be, but I kind of feel like I'm moving closer because I'm now getting out on the road more and doing the parts of my job that really bring value to me. And when I was doing that in those darker times as well, I was actually going into an environment that was quite negative. Like some of the fitness industry events that we have are actually quite negative, very narcissistic, very egotistical. So actually they weren't really elative satisfactory experiences for me. I came home thinking, fucking hell, that was a drag. I had to fight to get through that because of some of the stuff that happened. And then now that I'm going to a lot more positive environments, speaking at companies that, really want to hear what I've got to say and stuff, I'm leaving going, today was a fucking good day. Like, I'm getting back to myself. So I'm just I wanted to kind of draw in some of the great points you've made today in my experience and how I feel it's helping me.
Yeah, but things, I mean, I can totally relate to that. When you go to these fitness events and everything else, Ben, there's so much negative energy at those events because a lot of people, unfortunately, in the fitness world and sort of, there's so much insecurity there. Everything on the external, because they're all focused on the external, they're masking what's going on inside. And this is sort of, they build this body, they build this structure that makes them seem sort of invincible. So, and then you relate that to then going to somewhere where people are feeding off your energy. They're not only feeding off your energy, they're giving it back to you. So when you go away, you feel, and it's the same for me because I totally know where you're coming from because I have been to some events where you don't get that and you walk out of there and you think, God, that was a fucking drag. But then you do get those events, which luckily, fortunately these days, nearly everyone I go to. I'd say everyone I go to. I don't want to over big myself up, but I walk away there and the feeling is just unbelievable because it's energy. We're all energy. We're all emitting energy. And once you're in a room of people, that the vibration is exactly the same as each other's, and that energy is then you're absorbing each other's energy. So it's just, and again, that goes back to the point I made that the fulfillment we get from helping others. It's like, if you go to your office and you're in your office all day long, there's someone that pisses you off all the time. And there's a lot of people. I actually heard that 10% of people in the corporate world have no friends at work. I mean, you imagine going to that environment.
Wow.
Waking up to go to that every day. I mean, that is just, I can't even imagine that. It's disgusting. But, we need to be around people. We need to be around people that give us a similar vibration. And that's, once people understand, I think ego is a massive thing. If no one takes anything from today, I'd start understanding ego and start understanding, at the moment, we all have ego. Sometimes I walk down the street and it's like these days, and I'm an emotional observer, and I'm like, oh, I hope someone notices me today. And then I go, shut the fuck up. Why are you even thinking that way? You know what I'm saying? That's just ego, but I'm cutting it off. I'm like, thank you, go away. That's not the way. That's not who I am. But it's always there. But I understand it's there. But people don't understand that. And ego, it causes you to defend yourself. It causes you to retaliate. It causes you to do a lot of things that are very negative to you. It's like when you react and you have a problem. I don't know. You shout at someone, and then afterwards you feel like absolute shit, don't you? You walk out, your girlfriend or your boyfriend, and you walk out of the house and you go, oh my God, why did I do that? And you feel like a dickhead all day long. And that was just ego. It wasn't you. It was your ego came flaring in. But once you be able to understand all that, that affects everything in life. One thing I teach, I've always taught this, and a very simple technique in all these situations. What happens when we get into stressful situations? Our breathing becomes erratic. What happens then is our cortisol levels fill up. And that's when we start making irrational decisions. That's when we go into turbo drive to take the shortest cut out of every situation we're in. So that's why we retaliate in such a volatile manner. It's just trying to get out of the situation in any way possible. But one thing I learned a long time ago, and they actually teach this in the special forces now, in a lot of countries. I doubt they do it in the UK. But it's simple breathing. It's learning to make sure you maintain a steady rate of breathing. And that is a lot, there might be a lot of people who understand this, but it's box breathing. So when you get into a situation, instead of your breathing becoming erratic, you need to control breathing. It's box breathing. So it's breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, and keep that pattern going, like a box. And once you learn to do that, that lowers cortisol levels, and it allows you to make decisions and take actions that come from a mind of clarity and not panic. So I know I kind of digressed away, but I just wanted to leave people with something that they can do, and breathing, you breathe half, you'll live half. You've got to maintain a lot of breathing. Your breathing is so important to you, to your mental state.
Ollie, we love a tangent on this show, so don't apologise for that. Dude, I could stand here and speak to you for hours, but we have a time limit, and your time is hugely valuable. So I just want to say thank you for your time today. I think everyone listening can join me in thanking you as best as they can from their audio experience in their car or on a walk or wherever you are. Ollie, if people want to find out more about you, what you're doing, you run great events, you've got a book, there's loads going on, give people the links and the rundown.
Yeah, basically we've obviously got the book Breakpoint, which is on Amazon, is doing really well at the moment. I've got a website where you can find pretty much everything that we do as a company, Breakpoint, so that's break-point.co.uk. I've also got my personal website, which directs to all of my projects, which is ollieollerton.co.uk, and you can find me on all Instagram, Twitter, and all that kind of usual stuff. So, but yeah, I hope people, your listeners get something from this, Ben. I thank you for having me on the show.
100% they have. Everyone listening, if you've enjoyed this, please give it a like and a share with someone. If you think this show could help them, forward it to them, email it to them, tag them in it, walk up to them and say, "Oi, listen to this podcast." If you've enjoyed it, please share your thoughts with Ollie or myself. If you think something has impacted you, then we both make ourselves very available on social media. If you want to ask a question or you want to connect in some way, that is the beautiful power of the internet now, that we can connect and we can help each other in a more meaningful way. But thanks again, Ollie. Absolutely amazing show. Thank you for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. I will see you next week with an amazing show. And that leaves me to just say one thing: go away and have an awesome day. Goodbye.